invasion of a sovereign democratic European country by a Russian dictator. How concerned are you that we might see a genuine fracturing here?
Last Friday was shocking, but unfortunately, I'm not surprised. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance just trashed the 80-year transatlantic partnership that has kept all of us safe in the Western world. And now all of our allies are asking, can we trust Donald Trump? Can we trust the United States? Are they a good faith partner? Canada is already preparing for the worst. And now all of our partners in Europe, as well as our partners in the Asia Pacific, Australia, New Zealand, the entire democratic world is wondering, will the United States honor their commitments? If a treaty has been signed by the US Congress, Donald Trump can't arbitrarily break it. That's in violation of federal and international law. But right now, Donald Trump says, I have the power to do whatever I want. I can make law. I can discern what the law is. Nobody can stop me. Nobody can check me. And we've entered a new age.
I mean, shoot, nobody was checking Biden. I ain't had nothing to say then. But okay.
I don't think anyone alive today really remembers what it was like back in the age of empires, prior to World War I, prior to World War II. And that's what Donald Trump and the Putinists in our own government want to do. The United States wants to ally. Our government wants to ally with Russia against our smaller, weaker, democratic, traditional allies. These alliances.
Bro, we don't need Russia to do that. And Russia don't need us to do that. If they wanted to, bro, here's the thing. Bro, if we tag team with Russia, like y'all would just shut the hell up. I mean, what are y'all gonna tell us? The two strongest the top three superpowers in the world, U.S., China, Russia. If we're telling if you're telling us the top three, out of the top three, two of us teamed up, well, there's nothing you can do to stop us. I mean, let's be real. Every European country on its own, if it was left on its own to fight Europe off, to fight Russia off, it'd fall under Russia. So what is this fear mongering here? Like, I'm gonna be real with you. It could have been happened. If that was the prime objective, bro, Putin don't need a green light. You see, did he need a green light to do Ukraine? No, he didn't. So what made you think he needed a green light for any other country? If that was his true initiative, if this was his true initiative, he'd have been went off on Poland and he'd have been progressing forward. Still, like, think about it. He didn't even take all of Ukraine. If this was about expanding westward, and if I was Putin, that was the idea, then why the hell am I just stopping on this small little part of Ukraine?
Alliances were built on shared values, respecting democracy, international law, human rights. Yes. Three things that Donald Trump doesn't care about. Three things that Vladimir Putin doesn't care about. And if the American people don't rise up now and put a stop to this, then we're going to have a lot more wars.
Okay.
A lot more wars, as Xi wants to redraw the maps, Putin wants to redraw the maps, and Trump wants to redraw the maps.
Okay. Andrew Wilson, your response to that?
Yeah, so I mean, more panic mongering from the stupid leftists. So anything they can do to say, oh, Zelensky's a hero. This guy, by the way, in the paradox of freedom, who's pressing people into service in his country who don't want to go, while he's in a great battle for freedom. He went to the White House and completely embarrassed himself. He decided to have a massive argument in front of the American people, which should not have happened, in the middle of trying to get some type of peace treaty together on behalf of his own nation. Do leftists hold him accountable? Of course not. Instead, somehow, it's always Donald Trump's fault. By the way, this is our treasure, my money that's going over to Ukraine in order to fund this rapidly growing bloodbath that you so desperately want. Well, at the same time, you say, well, Andrew, don't you think that it's all because Putin is so bad? It's like, look, there's no good guys here. Stop pretending that I need to follow this dialectic that there's good guys who are involved in this. Ukraine was always a corrupt government. The Russian government's a corrupt oligarchical government, and they're at war with each other. And I don't want my treasure to go over there, and I don't want my kids to go over there and fight a war. I'm sorry, but I think that we will refrain from entering into another European theater. As you bring up, people don't really understand what it was like, in these pre-imperial dynasties. Yeah, the thing is like, we do have grandparents or great-grandparents left alive who were part of these European theaters, and they were bloodbaths, absolute bloodbaths. And what we need right now is a peace treaty, not any more of your, cocksure posturing about, the good guy Zelensky and the bad guy Putin. It's a false dialectic, and I'm sick of it.
Dave Smith.
It's like, bro, y'all gonna stop trying to paint this man as a villain just to put us into war. It's like, bro, we're not going for it, okay? You can paint this man as a villain as much as y'all want, and we're not gonna fight Russia for Ukraine, okay? We're not doing that. It's not worth it. There's no use in it. There's honestly no win in it for us. There's more of a win in it for us bringing peace to the situation than putting boots on the ground. I mean, why we want to risk American lives when we can just save both lives on both sides and get a good deal out of it? But y'all don't want that for some reason.
It's very interesting to me to see the difference between the way a lot of people in America are viewing all this, particularly the Oval Office showdown, and the way countries like the UK here or other European countries are viewing it. But ultimately, everybody would like to see peace. Do you think we're more or less near to a peace settlement than we were before Friday?
Oh, I think we're closer to one, and I think that's great. And Andrew is spot on. And look, I mean, I know I've said this before on your show, Piers, here, but when you hear this fear mongering about the Putinists in our government, I mean, look, at least during Joseph McCarthy in the Senate and in the House on Un-American Activities, you know, during what is known now as McCarthyism, at least back then there were some actual communists. The idea that there are Putinists within our government is just ridiculous. Right. And, you know, I love how everybody freaks out when Donald Trump is doing what is the scariest thing in D.C., talking about potentially ending a war. And then we hear these lectures about like the
power. I'll let you know, like, bro, the man wants to end a war. He wants to bring peace to a situation, and y'all are upset. Bro, just like he brought a ceasefire to Gaza, and y'all saying, oh, well, he's the one who caused it. Oh, he's complicit in the genocide. I'm like, all right, then what the hell was Putin? Sorry, what the hell was Biden doing then? It's like, y'all have honestly no criticism of the left, and that's kind of crazy. It's like, and you're acting as if he wasn't under leadership of the left the entire time, and you're acting as if, when did this whole situation start? Oh, both situations, October 7th and the Ukrainian war, happened under who? Biden. So I'm gonna be real with you. Biden could have stopped this. He could have stopped both wars, but the man wasn't all the way there. We know that.
Power of the president. Meanwhile, you know, Barack Obama, not that long ago, forget, obviously, the Constitution is very clear that Congress has to declare a war. We haven't declared a war since World War II, but at least George W. Bush got like some authorizations from the Congress. Barack Obama went to war in Libya, in Syria, in Yemen. Not even anything from Congress. And we don't hear a freak out about like the power of the president until one is actually discussing the possibility of ending a war. And look, I mean, what Zelensky did in the Oval Office has got to be the greatest strategic blunder that I've ever seen in my life. For him to think that when he is in a desperate situation, completely reliant on Donald Trump, he thought the way to accomplish this was to go in there and try to out-alpha Donald Trump in a language he barely speaks. I mean, he did the biggest disservice to his own country and this entire effort. But you know what? I'm fine with.
Honestly, like I said, I say he overplayed his hand. It's like, and he was dealing with the wrong people. He thought he was gonna he was dealing with the Biden administration. He thought he was gonna walk in, Putin bad, give me money, walk out. That's what he thought was gonna happen. He didn't expect to be sat down and be like, look, man, we can't afford to give you any more money. You need to come up with some type of peace deal with Putin. And he's going like, peace deal? Oh, I can't trust him. You trust Putin to have a ceasefire? I'm like, bro, we have no choice. Your people have no choice. Like, what else? But okay.
With that, because the whole thing is that America was never supposed to be a global empire, and the American people don't want to be a global empire. We're supposed to be a constitutionally limited republic, and there is no such thing as a constitutionally limited world empire. We should get out of the empire business. It's been nothing but a disaster for the American people.
Well, let me bring in Lieutenant General Ben Hodges, retired U.S. commander in Europe. General, great to have you on Uncensored. You've heard there the conflicting views from your perspective, with all your extensive military background. What did you make, first of all, of what you saw in the Oval Office on Friday?
Well, thanks for the privilege. And extensive military service is another way of saying I'm really old. So thanks for the euphemism.
My apologies for the ageist way I framed that.
Look, I have to say, Friday was one of the hardest days for me I've had in a long time. It was very difficult to watch how President Zelensky was treated in there. And look, you could criticize his as Dave just did, the fact that he pushed back there in the Oval Office. But you know what? I mean, he's leading a country that's fighting for its survival, and he was being bombarded with absolute false information. And it also revealed to me, or made it clear to me, that the people around the president do not understand the nature of war or why people fight. This notion that, look, you got to stop, you don't have the cards. George Washington sure didn't have the cards. The Taliban didn't have the cards.
No, whoa. You can't compare that to George Washington. George Washington had he had the finances, okay? He had the finances. Oh, okay. He may not have the cards at the time, but the man had finances. That's how he got through. This man is not fucking George Washington. He's not gonna come through in the clutch. He's not, okay? It's Russia versus Ukraine. What are you talking about? You're saying, oh, well, if we just keep on believing in them, they'll turn this around. No, they won't.
Cards. The Vietnamese did not have the cards, but yet all of them defeated much larger, technically superior forces. And so I think that what's missing from this is a clarity of what is our strategic objective. What?
Please explain how I'm out of my mind. Explain it, because I guarantee you y'all can't stand on it. Or you can't give me a better situation than a ceasefire deal that Trump proposed. Give us a better situation that doesn't involve us getting involved and putting boots on the ground. Can you? Okay, if not, then sit on your fingers and listen.
What are we trying to accomplish? What do we want in Europe? Why does Ukraine matter? It's not charity, obviously. It's because the Chinese are watching to see, are we serious when we talk about respect for sovereignty, respect for international law, respect for freedom of navigation? And if the Chinese see that we're not even willing to do this in Europe, then I don't think they'll be very impressed with what we say and do in the Indo-Pacific.
Are you serious?
And of course, our economy is tied to Europe.
Do you think China would try us? Bro, these are two separate situations. That's why even bro's looking at them kind of weird, like, bro, these are two separate countries. One country is a fucking superpower, and one country is eating off us. We literally got to give it money. China don't need fucking money from us to go out there and commit its own war. They don't need it. What are you saying?
The biggest trading bloc in the world, or the trading relationship, is between Europe and the United States. And so,
bro, and if you think China looking at this whole Ukraine situation going like, oh, look how America's handling this. If anything, they're looking at Russia and being like, hey, is Russia doing all right over there? You think Ukraine done warm out just a tiny bit? If anybody's getting looked at right now, is Russia, and how long they can do this for. And it looks like they can do this until, well, I'm gonna be real, they can do this longer than Ukraine can. I'll tell you that.
So if Ukraine fails, you're going to see about another 10 million Ukrainian refugees heading into Poland and Germany and Western Europe. That affects us. So all
right, let me pull your card on that, because you said I can't comprehend that Russia wants to destroy Ukraine fully. Russia had the capability to destroy Ukraine fully. Russia had the capability since day one to destroy Ukraine fully. Russia has nukes. Russia has hypersonic missiles. They could have did whatever the fuck they wanted, but they took it easy on them, obviously. Like, bro, they hit them with no heads on the hypersonic missiles just to scare them, to let them know that you can't stop us. And the Ukrainians know it. So what do you mean? Russia has the artillery to take them out day one if they wanted to. What do Ukraine got? Javelins that they're running out of? Like, come on, bro. You know you don't sound right. He's like, he was going to fully take over Ukraine. If he could have been did that. He could have been did that if he wanted to.
The Biden administration failed to do it. The Trump administration has not yet done it, to say our strategic objective.
Is what it is.
Before I go to Andrew to respond to that, General, just from a pure military perspective, is there any way Ukraine can either win this war with enough support or chuck Russia out of the 20% of Ukraine it's currently occupying? Are either of those two things remotely achievable?
Absolutely. Look, this war has been going on 11 years. 11 years, and Russia still, with every advantage only controls 20% of Ukraine. They have gone a total of.
And hold on. Do y'all know the population of Ukraine? Ukraine is 37 million people and sinking, by the way. 37 million people and sinking. Russia, 143 million people. Who you think is going to go? Come on now. Are we really going to go people for people here? If they went people for people, Russia would still have an extra 100 million people left. So they don't got the numbers. They don't got the military. They don't got the, they don't have the military strength at all, honestly. So if Russia honestly wanted to just steamroll over Ukraine, they could have.
60 kilometers in the last year from Avdiivka to the outskirts of Prokhorovsk. That's it. Despite enormous advantages and huge casualties, the great Russian Black Sea Fleet, nobody even talks about them anymore. The Russian Air Force failed its two main tasks, achieve air superiority and interdict the lines of communication from Poland and Ukraine. They're not able to do it. So it's clear that the Russians do not have the ability to break through or overrun the Ukrainian defenders the way their grandfathers did in the Second World War. That just doesn't exist. So, and this is without the United States actually committing, or European countries actually committing to helping Ukraine win. You know, the Biden administration never could say, we want Ukraine to win. And so you ended up with this sort of a drip support. And of course,
bro, Biden just don't want a military alliance on his borders. If y'all can't understand that, I don't understand. Come on now. A military alliance on your border is not a good thing. We all can sit there and agree to that, right? All right, cool. So why should Putin accept that if we wouldn't accept it? Like, think about that. And then here's the thing. If Putin honestly wanted to just take over Ukraine, why didn't he just take it all over and just say, fuck us? Why isn't he even trying to look for a deal with us? I'm just saying, if y'all let this carry out and you really think Ukraine's going to win, you are low-key lost. Like, they do not have the military power. They do not even have the population size to take on Russia unless somebody helps. Like, and that's just the fact of the matter. I don't see anybody stepping in on that.
I think if the Europeans are finally waking up, that they realize that they are going to pay an enormous price if Ukraine fails. And so about 50% of the ammunition that's produced in Europe today goes to customers in the Middle East and in Africa. So it's not like they don't have industrial capacity. They have not yet shown the political will or the strategic backbone to do what needs to be done.
Okay, and Andrew Wilson, some people on the conservative right in America want to see Zelensky resign and have somebody else to deal with here. What do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, there hasn't been he suspended all elections in his nation and probably shouldn't be the sitting president.
But he's hang on. On that point, though, just to be clear, the country remains under martial law. So it was supposed to have an election, I think, last April, May.
If this happened here in the United States, these guys would be screaming bloody murder, that Trump was a dictator, that he was a neo-Nazi, that he was a fascist.
That he's only continuing wars who can stay in power is like, bro, spare me. If we had that going on, y'all would call this man a dictator, trying to say he's trying to keep us in war to maintain power. I mean, like Zelensky, but y'all was championing him.
Authoritarian. If this happened under martial law in the United States, and
I'm talking hypothetically, of course,
guys would be screaming for blood right now. For some reason, though, when it's Zelensky, it's fine because it's under martial law. That makes it all better. They can press people into service. That's okay. They don't mind that.
But how could they? Okay, but how could they? But Andrew, how could they realistically have a free and fair election, given that 6.5 million Ukrainians have left the country as refugees?
Perhaps they could.
Hang on. Let me finish. 3.5 million more are living under Russian occupation, so clearly can't vote freely or fairly in the way they may wish to. Plus, they're still at war, so there's a front line which has thousands and thousands more Ukrainians battling it out every day who wouldn't be able to vote either. How does this election even happen? Never mind the fact that under their constitution, which got parliamentary.
Here's the thing. I'm not saying that it's not. Is that would y'all have the same look? I'm not saying that martial law is a fair reason. Like martial law isn't a fair reason not to have an election. I'm saying, would you accept the same circumstances if it was Trump? That's what we're wondering here. I guarantee y'all would lose y'all shit. I guarantee it. If we were in war right now under Trump and he said martial law and this war went on for 8 years, so that means we had 4 more extra years of Trump, y'all will lose y'all shit. And y'all know that.
Massive support dictates they can't have an election while they're under martial law anyway. But how do you have a free, fair election? given those set of
Yeah,
circumstances.
perhaps you
Yeah, I'll give
couldn't,
you that one. I'll
though
give you
there are
that.
war-torn regions before which have had elections. But let's just grant for a second that you couldn't. So what? These guys would still be screaming bloody murder if the shoe was on the other foot here in the United States, and it was impossible for us to do a free
But
and fair
nobody
election.
did when nobody did when the UK.
They would
well, hang
still
on.
be screaming
Yeah,
about
but
it.
nobody did when the UK didn't have an election for 10 years before and during World War II. Everybody understood. There was no criticism of that. There was
That
a
was a
realization.
different era with people who weren't lunatics. And now the left is a bunch of lunatics, and they apply a double standard, and they have what is called the paradox of freedom. And right now, they don't care that people are being pressed into the front lines. He brings up Washington, who was using a volunteer militia. Nobody was getting pressed into service in order to fight off the British. These people are lunatics, and they're bloodthirsty monsters, ultimately. Anytime we try to move towards peace, as Dave Smith rightly points out, these people want to do everything possible to not do that because, Putin might get a W. It's like, look, ultimately, I'm going to say this again, reiterate it again. Neither one of these are the good guys. Ukraine has a corrupt government, has a history of corruption. The Putin and Russia, history of corruption, very, very bad countries doing very bad things to each other. The Europeans didn't, if they cared so much, how come they only recently started to actually fund this? When Trump got into office,
I agree with you.
there was only 4 of them, 4 countries, including ours, that even had 3% of its GDP going to this conflict until Trump demanded it. So it's like, no, I don't buy this narrative that we've always cared about our tree. You cared when our treasure's going over there and funding the entire thing, right?
And guys, make sure to like the video, man. Go ahead and double tap that screen. Let's get more people in on the conversation. Hit the 3 dots up there in the corner, man. We got about over 100 y'all in here, man. Appreciate the support. Let's keep it going.
Suddenly, there's a blank check. I'm sure that the corrupt Ukrainian government loves having our blank checks go over there where they pocket half of it and only half of it goes to the war effort. I don't trust any of these people.
All right, Jake, I mean, there's no doubt. I said this from the moment Donald Trump first started talking about NATO being potentially obsolete if the member countries didn't pay their base.
I ain't gonna lie, I'm taking some time to try to understand y'all. Look, I'm a reasonable guy. I take time to try to understand the disagreements because I really want to know what y'all want. Y'all have this criticized, y'all not made any solutions. What's your solution to this then? How do you want this to go that sounds reasonable? Because if you think Russia's giving up land and you can't make them do it, then the only thing we can do is honestly declare these guys the loser and tell them, yo, you got to accept what Russia's willing to let you to keep. And you got the land right now, cool, keep that. But the land y'all lost, hey, man, hey, you shouldn't have been here in the first place.
Basic financial dues, which they weren't doing in the main. There's no doubt, given how many more are now paying their dues or more, that memo got loudly received. But Europe is still, most countries, including this country, UK, have not been stepping up properly on their own defenses. And there comes a point, does there not, where I completely understand why a lot of Americans are simply done with being the global police officer. Why should they be? If the Europeans aren't prepared to take their own defenses seriously enough, why should America constantly feel obliged to come in and spend American tax?
And that's the problem. Here's the thing, though. This is the worst part about the Europe. Y'all are the one fear-mongering that he's going to take over all of Europe. Y'all are the one fear-mongering this shit. So why aren't y'all putting up the money towards it? Why are we putting up more money towards protecting y'all, making sure that, Putin doesn't go into Europe? Why aren't y'all, okay, if that's the real narrative, which I don't believe, because if that was the real narrative, then why isn't every European nation giving in then? Why? Like, make that make sense there. And shout out my man Fire, and he says, do these dum-dums really think Putin will sit there and let them push into his territory? Hey, let those nukes off. Like, bro, that's what I'm saying. It's like, bro, it's like, look, I get it. Y'all don't like Putin, but he is still a dictator of a superpower, okay? Of a superpower nation, like it or not, okay? It's like you hate Trump, but at the end of the day, he's a billionaire, like it or not. Look, you're going to hate people that are just, I guess, good things in life. I'm sorry. It is what it is.
Fair money on bailing them out.
Well, except for Putin. I'm sorry. I framed that wrong. Being a dictator of a country is not a good thing in life. What? I mean, no, it's not a good thing in life.
The honest answer is because America has been writing the security policy for these countries since World War II. If America makes all the decisions, America calls the shots in this alliance, what incentive is there for our allies to spend increased amounts? Should they have been meeting that 2% NATO guideline? Of course they should. But they were lulled into a false sense of security, both from the United States and from the Russians. This entire plan of making Europe dependent on Russian energy exports, nations that trade together don't go to war with each other, we now know that's a lie. This was a post-communist collapse experiment. What if we economically intertwined ourselves with the Chinese, with the Russians? We make this globalization effort in order to connect them. That way, they won't want to risk their trade partners.
Globalization will screw us over with our manufacturing and our tech industry. Here you go trying to make it sound like it's a good thing for us. Like, okay, I'll let you continue to point.
In order to go to war with their neighbors. And what we've learned in the last 3 years is that we were wrong. We never should have made our economy, our energy needs dependent on either the Chinese or the Russians.
Agreed.
Because they're dictatorships and they're authoritarians and they want to be empires.
Okay, but y'all knew this. Though. And now it's a problem. I mean, we owe trillions of dollars to China, and y'all knew there was a communist state. Like, why didn't y'all just stop doing business? Why were we doing business with a communist state? That's what I always wondered. I'm like, hold on, we don't like their government, but we're doing business with them. And now all of a sudden, like, yeah, we don't like Russia's government, but we were doing business with them. They just turned into a bad guy probably over the last, 8 years or so? Shoot, back in the day, Russia was, we was kind of cool with Russia.
They want,
like, well, I know better than we are now,
to invade their smaller, weaker neighbors or topple their governments, either create proxy states or redraw the maps. So now nobody can deny the reality. Nobody can deny the truth. Every democracy in the world has to reevaluate their trade partnerships and their food and energy supplies, because you cannot be reliant on dictators. You cannot be reliant on either China or Russia, because they will use those trade relations as leverage to get what they want on the battlefield, to get concessions from democratic nations that do try to negotiate in good faith. When the Russians and the Chinese will never negotiate in good faith. They will always make maximum demands. They will always lie. They will always cheat. They will always steal. You can't trust them. You shouldn't be working with them. And right now, Donald Trump is trying to negotiate an aluminum deal with the Russians. Donald Trump is trying to resume direct flights between the United States and Moscow on stolen planes. All of these aircraft that the Russians stole 3 years ago, Donald Trump wants to pretend like it never happened. We're trying to increase diplomatic staff when we know these people are all FSB agents and spies here just to subvert, undermine, and weaken the United States. Donald Trump is opening up the gates and making every American less safe and our country weaker. This has been a disaster the last 3 days, and Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are the ones driving all of this right now.
Okay, I mean, Dave Smith, I would not share some of that categorization, because I don't think this is by any means done, this scenario. I think that Trump ultimately is desperate to bring peace. He prefers peace to war. He said he'd do this before he came into office. He wants to get it done, as he does in Gaza as well. He wants to win the Nobel Peace Prize. There are lots of incentives here for Donald Trump to deliver on what he said he would deliver on. So I don't share that slightly apocalyptic view of where we are. But I also think Jake makes some very good points about, when you dance with the devil, you get pricked by the horns. And a lot of people believe that the way Donald Trump interacts with people like Putin and Xi and Kim Jong-un and others is detrimental to America's national interest. What do you feel?
I mean, global politics always involves interacting with bad people, and it only seems like the propaganda.
Appreciate you, Frankie D says, thanks, Seth. Appreciate your videos, man. Hey, I try my best. I try to stay engaged in the chat, the content. Hey, I try to do it all over here, and I appreciate the support and the baller alert, man. Shout out, Frankie D.
About this, arises when it's somebody who we want to support a war against. There's how about the way we interact with the Saudis or the Israelis, for that matter? The greatest thing that ever happened in the history of the world has happened over the last 30 years, and there's 1 billion people have been pulled out of extreme poverty, and a big part of that was because.
No, that's it. All right, Salient. I'm just gonna kill your point right here, and this is why I say it was too damn easy. This is why I said it was too easy. Because you're saying, oh, you only focus on the 5% of people and not the 95% who failed. And I'm like, bro, there's a reason why 95% of people fail, because they don't really put in the work. That's what it is. And 5% of the people actually do. 5% of people can keep a positive mindset through bad times. That's really what it is. And also, most millionaires came from poverty. So you saying that, oh, well, people are disadvantaged coming from poverty. Well, not really, because it kind of seems like the people who come from poverty become rich. And those who become from rich kind of force their family into poverty. And we know plenty of examples. That's why it would have been too easy to cook you. Okay, I ain't want to do you like that. Back to the show.
Richard Nixon went and talked to Mao Zedong, the most evil man who ever lived by the numbers. And so, look, I just think there's always this fear mongering that is associated with every single war. And, you mentioned age before. I'm old enough to have lived through a lot of these wars right now. America's been in a constant state of war since at least 9/11. And of course, we know that, with the war.
Oh, and shout out DD Gaming, man. I caught that comment, man. And see, he knows what I mean. Bro, you can grow up around a whole bunch of people in poverty. It don't mean you're going to end up in the same position. If you think differently and you move differently, you will end up in a different position. These are why people who were in poverty became millionaires, because they moved differently. They did things differently. There's a reason why 5% of people make it, and it's not because of luck. It really isn't.
In Iraq, it was.
Y'all need to start reading more. I don't know, like read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. There, I gave y'all a reading assignment. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. If you ain't never read that book before, slap yourself upside the head. Go download the audio book. Go buy the actual book. I don't care, but read that goddamn book. And shout out Big Wave Dave. Yo, wait, Dave, it's like 5. But shout out though. Hey, shout out to Big Wave Dave.
It was going to be a mushroom cloud over Kansas, right? Saddam Hussein was going to give the weapons that he didn't have to the terrorists he wasn't friends with, and then they were going to nuke America. And they convinced everyone in America that this was the case. And we hear the same thing now. Although weirdly, there seems to be something so contradictory here between making the argument that Vladimir Putin is so weak that he can't even take over Ukraine, even though he's been at war with them since 2014, or however you want to calculate when the war actually started. And yet also he's some huge threat to reconstitute the Soviet Union. Or we just hear it asserted that China will move on Taiwan if Vladimir Putin gets to keep his percentage of Ukraine, which
that's what I'm saying. It's like, bro, like, oh, well, it's because they're going to see what we're doing over here. I mean, like, bro, you could have said the same thing about Biden and Israel. You could have said, well, since Biden's over here letting Israel do whatever, well, China should be able to that means he should be able to let China do whatever to Taiwan. Y'all could have made the same argument then, but you didn't, because why? It was under Biden.
I'm not even saying is impossible, but it's certainly not an inevitability. By the way, I don't think we could do anything if China wanted to move on Taiwan tomorrow. And right. I think Americans have to get out of this mindset, this empire mindset. Like, just for example, imagine, let's just say there was the political will and there was the desire. Let's say that the U.S. wanted to take Mexico City. We had decided we're going to do that. What could Russia do to stop us? What could China do to stop us?
Really?
Nothing. The idea is ridiculous. If we decided we wanted to do that, then we do that, period. Because we're the bigger, stronger country. And that's not great, but it is the way of.
That's what I'm saying. It's heartless. It sounds fucked up, but this is the reality. This is how it is right now. This kind of, the analogy he's giving you is what's the reality with Russia and Ukraine. It's like, bro, who can really stop them? It's like, you want to fight them? It's like, bro, we're going to lose too much fighting them. I mean, and here's the thing. If you want to fight them so much, go join the Ukrainian army and see how they're doing for real then. Since you guys think they're winning over there, why don't you go see for yourself? I'm pretty sure you'll come back surprised, or you may never come back.
The world. Man, look, the bottom line here is that people, and I will say like me at this point, because I've been talking about this conflict on big platforms for years at this point now. The head of NATO, Stoltenberg, I always get his name wrong, but he himself said that in late 2021, Vladimir Putin drafted a treaty between Russia and NATO. And what he was asking for was a promise that Ukraine will not become a member of NATO. And he said for that, he would not invade. And, the people like you just interviewed the great Jeffrey Sachs before we started this panel, the people like that, That's the deal we could have had if we had listened to people like that. And now, oh my God, wouldn't you give anything for that deal? Imagine you could have all of Ukraine, minus Crimea, under Ukrainian control, and all you had to give was a promise of not bringing Ukraine into NATO. Now, NATO's not even on the table anymore, and there's no way Ukraine's going to keep.
And do anybody remember how this all started? It all started because Ukraine wanted to go into NATO. All Ukraine had to do was be like, you know what? Look, man, Russia seems like they about to pop off over this. We'll just stay over here. Everybody remain peaceful, kumbaya, cool. But no, they want to force it into NATO. NATO wanted to get them in there to approach on Russia's border, and now here we are. It's like, bro, y'all try to smack Putin in the face and then expect him to hit back. Just be real and say that. Just be like, look, bro, we try to pull his whole card, and then we figured out he wasn't a hoe.
100% of its geographic integrity from the beginning of the war. This is the reality of the situation. Governments are not perfect, and neither is ours, but peace is better than war. This war did not need to happen, and it's been an absolute disaster, worst of all for the Ukrainian people.
On the issue of the election, I think it's worth noting, and I'll come to you, General, if I may, for a response to this, but Ukraine's parliament voted overwhelmingly to approve a resolution affirming the legitimacy of Zelensky's stay in office, asserting the constitutionality of deferring the presidential election while the country is at war. The 268 parliament members present voted unanimously to approve the resolution, while 12 other MPs were not present during the session. So that seems to me...
I mean, real, what you know is crazy. And let me spin this on y'all. Now, if I was Russia and I just have this easy-ass war, I can go ahead and just hold on to for years and years while the countries that want to see me fall throw their money into a senseless war. Hey, I'd keep it going for 8 years too. I'll keep that shit going. I'm like, oh, y'all just gonna throw y'all money into this senseless ass war, weaken y'all economy, weaken your dollar, while I'm over here running off with the Chinese yuan. Really? That's what y'all gonna do? Huh? Like, anybody ever wonder what Putin's strategy may have been behind stretching it out? I mean, if y'all just gonna throw money into the wind to it, y'all just burning money into a war. I'm just gonna win at the end of the day. And y'all hurting yourselves. Well, I mean, shit. Why wouldn't I would do it.
To be a very clear democratic mandate by the elected officials of Ukraine
in the foot
to endorse not having an election until the war is over.
Well, you know, some of us may not like the fact that Ukrainian...
Call and link in community tab. The call and link is the community tab, man. I definitely do want to hear from you guys. So shout out Big Wave Dave, Guest Dude. I know you two are pretty outspoken on this topic, so I do want to hear from y'all. And the rest of y'all were also in the chat. Like Seth.
Martial law includes a suspension of elections, but that is the law. And so, and then the fact that the Rada made the decision to vote and
post. It's in the post tab. The post tab. Sorry, I keep calling it community tab.
Give that sort of public endorsement. To me, that's compelling. Now, I do want to say, give Dave Smith credit. I finally heard him say something today that I agreed with. This war could have been avoided if we, the West, led by the United States, had responded appropriately after Russia invaded Georgia in 2008. If we had responded appropriately after they invaded Ukraine in 2014, and that's not a game. I mean, the whole world saw Russia invade Ukraine in 2014, and we did nothing when they jumped over the Obama red line in Syria. So this war is a result of failed deterrence, and trying to explain deterrence and spend money for deterrence is always a tough sell, because you have to convince taxpayers and voters and legislators of what the risk is and why you have to do it. That's hard, but it is much, much cheaper, obviously, to do that, to have successful deterrence, as we did for